JB here, JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Tuesday, July 15th, 9:04 a.m. Talk really quick about the market. Some names I'm looking at go from there. S&P futures in the green here. S&P is up about 0.4%. Lots of catalysts, right? So yesterday was kind of like a lackluster session. Markets open lower. I was kind of making a joke of it around the tariff, and I shouldn't say joke because it's really not a joke, right? Tariffs on countries have impacts on lives and well-beings of folks and things like that. So it's not really a joke, but the market as a whole, it seems like we're in an environment now where everything kind of all the negative possible headlines get shaken off, right? So over the weekend was EU and Mexico tariffs, 35% or whatever. Oh my gosh, back in April, you'd see the markets just getting pummeled. And here it is. We open it in red. It's like you almost know. I post as like again, not as a joke, but a joke. I guess you could say a little sarcasm, but I'm like, are we green yet? And then sure enough, we melt into the green. Highs at 2 o'clock, bounce around, and markets close slightly off all-time highs. Just remarkable stuff. U.S. dollars on an 8-session winning streak. I mean, albeit not the biggest rally, but maybe that's the floor there. And then overnight, you get the news. And I talked about this on I think it was on Friday. Jensen was meeting Trump on Thursday, and then he was going to China. He was doing it ahead of his trip to China. Like, oh my gosh, they're going to be able to get their chips, the HCO chips, back into China. I thought that news would hit Friday over the weekend, so it hits overnight. Just big news there as well. Big news for them and AMD. So what was a $5 billion hit in products just in chips alone after the U.S. nixed that deal, and now they reversed it. So to me, it's like all this backdrop, all this rhetoric. You see the headlines, oh, tough stance on China, and then we turn around and we do this. So I think it's like all these other trade deals with the tariffs. I think things are better than what you see the headlines with the especially EU, Mexico, Canada. I think it's all going to be somewhat more beneficial than people think, but hey, again, I've tried to be optimistic here. Uh, so that was that overnight. Then this morning we had banks report earnings, JP Morgan, BlackRock, all great earnings. JP Morgan, I think 6 straight earnings beat, strong quarter. Then you have Diamond saying market's resilient. But then talked about the Fed chair saying we need someone who's not a nonpartisan person in there. So an entity that is not aligned with any political, or it's got to be an independent entity, right? So that just leads just you hope down the line Powell just not resigns. Powell's term ends, and we go from there. There's no other shenanigans because I think that'll really rattle markets. But anyway, some of these bank stocks have been on such an epic tear that they're just pulling back a little bit here in the pre-market. So I'm not saying buy the dip, but names to watch if they do pull back a little more. And then the much anticipated CPI data, right? Last week was a vacuum in regards to catalysts, and finally we're getting a huge slew of data. We have CPI today, PPI tomorrow. We have retail sales Thursday. We have consumer confidence on Friday. We have Fed speak today, Fed speak tomorrow, and then all mixed in is earnings. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So if the market can kind of navigate this, I mean, that might bode well for 630 plus on the spot. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But anyway, CPI data this morning came in mostly in line, right? It's a year-over-year increase, but it was lower than expectation on the core side. And if you look at some of the categories, it's, if it was you were looking at the data in April, May, you see the headlines, oh no, car prices are going through the roof. Uh, and then you would think that people are trying to sell ahead of the tariffs. Then all these parts are going to increase the prices of cars. And then it's like that was the category that decreased the most, used and new cars. And who knows, you'll still have the folks saying that the data will at some point show higher inflation because of the tariffs, right? I mean, it's just you have to think there's going to be some kind of impact. But there was an article yesterday. It's like the tomatoes, right? There's an article. I think it was on CNN. They said they interview a lady who says her restaurant's going to go on a business if they slap 15% tariffs on tomatoes or something like that. And then you look, I'm like, how much do tomatoes cost? And then you look at the cost, like 15% of like an item that's pretty commoditized, right? I mean, it's not like you're selling like avocado's a little different. And who remembers the avocado toast fiasco of back in the day? That was crazy stuff too. It's just funny, like it makes for great reading, right? When you hear and you feel bad, you don't want to see a small business or whatever go out of business, but then you see the headline and you read it. I'm like, tomatoes is going to be the end of your business. You probably should be looking for better source or whatever. So that's the kind of headlines you see, and then you see the market reacting. Like, and then if you're on that side, you read that article, say, "Oh man, the economy's horrible, tariffs are killing everybody, inflation's horrible," and then you see the market higher, could drive you nuts, right? So you got to have an open mind. I'm not saying I agree with everything that goes on in the market and the current administration, whatever. I try to keep things not political, but like if you're not open to scenarios, and if you're April lows, Liberation Day, and that freaked me out too with some of the things that went on. But if you didn't have an open mind and say, hey, well, this there might be some positive outcomes, not all negative. You miss out on a run, number one, or worse yet, your inputs. All right, so that's too much on a rant already. Uh, and then last but not least here, so 617 to 628 on a SPY. If we get over 628 here today, I'll have to revisit some of those targets here. Upper Bollinger Band 634, so we get an overshoot. Maybe that'll be the next target. I don't know if we'll get that, but uh, that's that. All right. So, and also of note, S&P, the amount of stock trading over their 200-day moving average, still in the 60s. So, despite the market hit all-time highs, still kind of muddling around. So again, you have the bears back when it was stuck in the 50s. Bad breath, right? That's the big argument. Not all stocks are making over their 200-day moving average, which means momentum's not in favor of the bulls. Means more, this rally is short-lived. Like, you make all these arguments, right? But to me, you look, and back in 2024, the amount of stock trading over the 200-day moving average was around 70 to 75% for most of the year, and it hit a high of 86 back in March of last year. So, not saying that's where it needs to go to be a healthy mark, but to me, it just means there's possibility for we're not even in an uptrend yet in some of these names. So that could provide the next leg. Not only that, small caps, right? And I keep talking about small caps. Hopefully, if yields start to tick down, that'll be the next leg for small caps. All right. So now individual names. Made two trades yesterday, right? And one of them, thankfully, was getting TTD calls. The only regret I have here on TTD is that I didn't go out and get the August. I was looking at August 105s, the stocks in the 70s. I'm like, wow. So you start to do the math. I'm like, wow, if this gets to 85 in a week, those premiums are going to stay flat probably. So I was trying to do some rationale around what's the best risk reward. So for me, I thought, okay, Netflix has earnings on Thursday. Their big business now is their ad side of their business. So that a big boost in Netflix could certainly, especially roll over into some of these names that are monetized or provide platforms for marketers to advertise, and that's Trade Desk is the best. So you have to think that maybe positive earnings from Netflix would play through in a sympathy move. So sure enough, I went and got the weekly strikes, and I thought, okay, I'll continue to look for August strikes as well. And then it hit highs in mid morning or late morning, and then it just melted for the rest of the day. I'm like, oh, maybe I could have waited. But I thought maybe I would go and get the August strikes today. And then sure enough, right after the close, it was announced that it was being added to the S&P 500. Huge news. It's going to be added Friday before the open. So that number one adds urgency, right? And number two is surprising because AppLovin and Robinhood, those are names that have been thrown out there. They were going to get added to the S&P. So huge news. It's like TTD just need a kick to begin with. So even just being added to the S&P 500 index is going to bring all this inflow and folks buying and liquidity and upside. That's number one. And number two, it's like TTD is way off its highs from February. Not saying that's where it gets back to just because it's off its highs, but it's just like the kick it needed. So I would be surprised to see it traded 90 at the end of the week. Want to see it 85.18 is the level it broke down after its earnings in February. So that'd be a key spot. So if there is weakness at the open, I'd want to see that hold. But I'm going to lock something in at the open. Right now it's at 86 bucks. Have to think that the 82 strikes going to be at least $5, maybe higher. So I'll probably put a limit in at the open if it's over 86 at 550. If some of those fill, that's great. And then I'll just hold the rest and I'll use 85.12 or so as a kind of like a stop for the rest. And then the best part of that is I'll look and I'll add some more later dated strikes. So that's kind of thought process there. So great to finally, nice multi-bagger, 1,400% at the open. Nice way to start the week. And then JOBY. JOBY's over 13 bucks here in the pre-market. They just announced what news? JOBY's expanding manufacturing. I'll have to take a look what the news is. I posted an article. I think that came out like last week. Some reporter was out in the desert at a hangar that JOBY built, and supposedly they flew a hydrogen plane, hydrogen EV, electric vehicle takeoff and landing plane for 9 hours just running on hydrogen. I am not the biggest hydrogen fan. If Nikola fame, to see someone try and take a very volatile element and use it for transport. I mean, obviously, the Hindenburg, right? So I'm not going to sit here and use parallels to that and say, hey, I mean, that was a long time ago. But hydrogen is very hard to harness, right? But on the flip side, if you can take a vehicle, a plane, and go 9 hours, it didn't say miles per hour, how long it took, or whatever. But if they were able to figure out some kind of transcontinental, obviously, but intercontinental across the U.S. or whatever with hydrogen, when your only exhaust is water, right? I mean, wow. So what kind of addressable market does that open up with Joby? I mean, just crazy stuff. So anyway, my thoughts. I think it's headed 18 bucks plus in the coming weeks. So I'll continue to hold some. Well, I have the August 12th, so I locked some more in for 100% yesterday, and I still have the August 15s, and I'm going to go on. I'm waiting for September strikes to open, but I'll probably get October. So I was looking at October 18s yesterday. I was waiting for it to get over 13. Looks like it's going to happen here this morning. Well, it's 13:26 right now. So I'll add some Octobers. What a monster Joby has been. I'll continue to ride that one. Reddit yesterday, unfortunately, I was watching Reddit at the open and I wasn't able to get into Dexcom, but Reddit melted, well, actually dipped at the open and melted to 150 by about 11:15. It couldn't break 150, and once it got to 150, kind of struggled. So I went and used the move to close some of my calls out to cover some costs, and then it dipped. And then we've seen what Reddit does before. When it runs into the morning and dips, it doesn't it doesn't recapture the highs of the day. So I went and closed the rest of the calls out. Didn't want to lose. I didn't want to see that position turn red, number one. And number two, the premiums are so expensive that it might erode quick, especially if the stock drops. So I'll continue to revisit. Bull flag still setting up here, 175 plus if it breaks. So I'll be watching that one. And then Dexcom, uh, I was watching on Friday. It sold off 2% plus. No catalyst I could really see or speak of. They report earnings July 30th. The hundreds, I think, or the 105s look interesting on a risk reward basis. So may look to get some strikes there to play for premium build into earnings with the possibility to close some out before the report. TripAdvisor over 18 bucks here. Only a matter of time for that starboard letter comes out. Unfortunately, my 17 strikes expire on Friday, so I'm gonna have to close those out before the end of the week. So I'll probably close those out today. Still have the September strikes. I'll probably look for some later dated strikes as well. I think it trades north of 20, and once that, I don't even think it needs the letter, but that'll be the next kick for it. And then SERV Robotics, right? So added some more strikes yesterday. I can go on and on about this one. Tight Bollinger Band set up now. I think it trades north of 14 in the coming days. It's just a great story. I mean, you see, what was it this morning? What did I miss? But anyway, I mean, this whole theme, Joby's right into it, right? So you'll also have SERV Robotics partners with a company where their drones, they deliver the food order or what grocery order or whatever to a depot for a drone, and the drone takes it the last mile. I think this last mile theme is just continuing to finally come to fruition with whether it be robotic side or whether it be the drone side or a name like Joby. So that's why I continue to like these names. And I mentioned yesterday you have New York City trying to raise the minimum wage, or at least I wouldn't say minimum. Yeah, I guess it is minimum wage for these drivers to grocery delivery and Uber and DoorDash and all that stuff. So to me, that creates market forces, right? So if you're a company and you want to cut costs, well, of course you want to see humans employed where applicable, right? But there's situations where those positions are going to be replaced. And I remember there's almost so many times over the years that there's been arguments that humans are going to be replaced with, robots or AI or whatever. And then it turns out it just gets changed, right? There's a different job opening that's created where one gets eliminated. So anyway, folks, let's have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. We got 13 minutes to the open. Rock and roll.